Sam and I are always talking about being prepared, whether it's hurricanes in Florida, earthquakes in California, flooding in Arizona, or supply chain disruptions.
Exactly, Chuck. When pharmacies shut down, it does not matter how tough you are, you still need access to critical medicine.
That's why we trust Jace Medical. The Jace case comes with 5 life-saving antibiotics and key over-the-counter meds, so you're covered when things get disrupted.
And Jace goes beyond just the Jace case. They also offer first aid kits, daily prescriptions, and long-term nutrition with Jace Pantry. Don't wait for the next hurricane warning or natural disaster. Take control of your health and peace of mind today.
Visit jace.com and use code FUTURE at checkout for $10 off your order. That's FUTURE at JASE.com.
In today's digital world, standing out is more important than ever. Whether you're running for office, leading a cause, or hosting a vote for the cutest pet in town, you need a web domain that's simple, memorable, and action-oriented. You need a .vote web domain. It's clear, impactful, and establishes a lasting presence for your campaign. Don't wait. Head to GoDaddy.com or Name.com, type in your name.vote, and get started today. Because after all, every pet deserves a web address that's as special as they are.
All right, welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. We're continuing on now with Carol McNamara. Dr. McNamara is the director of the Great Hearts Institute for Classical Education. Before we went to the break, Dr. McNamara, you brought up a National Symposium that you have coming up. That sounds kind of fascinating to nerds like us, so tell us more about it.
Well, it's a perfect conference for nerds like all of us. We invite. It's called the Great Hearts. It's the Great Hearts National Symposium for Classical Education, and as I was saying, it's a big tent conference where we invite classical educators, school leaders, thought leaders in the classical and education realm to join us. First, we have about 90 speakers, over 60 sessions, and those sessions are keynote speakers. We have Jeff Rosen this year from our theme. I should tell you what our theme is. We've jumped on the wagon of the semi-quincentennial, so it's classical education and the American experiment, the Declaration of Independence.
Which we don't have without that classical education. There is no America without that classical education of our founders.
And that's the theme of Chris Perrin's keynote address, who is he's one of the leaders in the revival of classical education.
Oh, he's brilliant. His work is fantastic.
We love Chris, and we're so excited he's coming. We have Jeff Rosen to address how Jeff Rosen is the president and CEO of the National Constitution Center, and he's going to talk about how classical education and classical ideas influenced the founders. That was, at the time of the founding, education was classical education. And then we have Doug Lemov, who is a specialist in, he's written the book Teach Like a Champion and investigated the revival of using the true science of reading to teach students to read. And the rest of Symposium is scholar talks, panel discussions about subjects like AI in education and classical education and the relationship between civics and classical education. And then also the rest of the conference are really hands-on workshops, K-5, 6-12, K-12.
Maybe a little bit of a curveball here, but those hands-on workshops, how are you finding, or how are your teachers finding it different engaging with students? It seems like there's been a very significant cultural shift in the last 5 to 10 years with young folks. How has that changed their interaction, and how do you engage them in a world where everything's demanding their attention for 2 seconds at a time?
That's so interesting. First of all, no phones in Great Hearts Classical Academies, and that's been we've done that before anyone started talking about it. And even when I taught it at ASU and Utah State and Weber State, when I realized there was Wi-Fi everywhere, I just said, you've got to put your computers and phones away. All I need is your attention for 90 minutes or 90 minutes at a time, right? And I think that we have a student population that where parents are looking for this kind of education for their students. Classical education began for an audience that knew they wanted it. But now, after COVID, of course, but even just given the general challenges that you're talking about, that there's technology everywhere that is demanding the attention of students, parents are looking for an education that makes their kids serious, prepared human beings for flourishing in an American democratic republic.
What time frame did you see this increase in interest in classical education from parents? Because I know it probably wasn't that way 10 years ago. Do you think when was the time frame this interest came about again?
I think it started, when Great Hearts started around 2002, around the turn of the century. But again, there were parents out there who knew it, that they wanted this education for their kids, for their students. But as the 21st century sort of started up, and then especially with COVID, so there are parents who wanted classical education. They wanted their kids to be reading whole books. I don't know if you've been paying attention. I feel like the universe is telling me something. Every single article that people are sending me is about the decline in literacy.
100%.
There's a crisis. There's a crisis of literacy. There's a crisis of seriousness. And after COVID, I mean, this is an old story, but parents saw what their kids were learning at school, and for them it was a crisis, and they started to seek out through various options in school choice, but they started to seek out 44% of parents, when they're looking for new schools, choose classical schools now.
Is there any way a parent can put their child into a classical education like Great Hearts, and that child does not come out a better thinker and writer?
I can't imagine how that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, seriously. So if you're a parent and you're saying, what should I do with my child so he or she could be independent thinkers, that they have some background, that they can be a better writer, this seems to be the path, right? And let me follow up with this as well. Would you recommend this? Let's say you go and you have a child that's very good at the STEM, right? The math, the science.
Yep.
Why is it also important for them to also study classical literature and philosophy?
Well, I don't accept the premise that they don't also study math and science as an.
Well, no, and I would agree with that. I'm not suggesting that, but for someone who just says my son or daughter is very good at math or science, or the case may be, why is it important that they also bring this into their academic achievements?
Right. So it's interesting. Last year, our theme at the National Symposium for Classical Education was cultivating wonder, right? And wonder is at the heart of it. Wonder should be at the heart of any education. And because wonder is the gateway, the opening to learning, to caring about ideas, to caring about what makes the world work, how things in nature move and function, what numeracy is, how you count things, how you add them up, how you understand the way things move in the universe. And you have to understand what the moral and ethical questions are, what a human is, and how a human lives in the world in order to understand the way that you should use and understand and work with numbers. So I think that humane letters, the reading of literature, the understanding of ideas and arguments is also the gateway to being a good mathematician, a good scientist, or which will open up engineering and medicine and all those fields.
Which makes you ask the appropriate questions. The insightful questions, so you can do better at it.
One of the things I think is different, and tell me how important you think this is, but with Great Hearts, I felt like they had a whole of student approach from the start, where maybe some of the other big name competitors, and I'm not here to trash anybody in that space, but their focus is maybe so narrowly academic, it's so narrowly STEM, or it's on other things.
Right.
I thought one of the advantages of Great Hearts was they included the athletics. They included all of the extra things that are built in around a public high school for your students, which a lot of other charters sort of missed that boat.
Right.
How much of an advantage do you think that gives your students in developing as fully rounded humans?
Well, I think that's true. We focus, young students learn Latin. They learn how to read, how to dissect language, how to learn a foreign language, right? So Latin is a foundation for learning. Yes, they learn Greek too, ancient Greek too. But they learn how to learn languages. Their minds become agile in becoming familiar with language per se, and that makes the English language and literature and ideas more accessible to them. But then they're also all involved in music, and every school has an art project every year. So they are prepared to appreciate not just the good in terms of society and learning and politics and government and so on, and not just the human in terms of literature, but also the beautiful in terms of literature and music and what they see around them and how to appreciate it and what they hear around them.
So tell us about your new quarterly publication.
Thank you for asking.
Oh, you're welcome.
So in September, as an extension of our gathering of the classical community, it occurred to me that we have this annual gathering of sort of 900 people from across the classical community, but that I should sort of take that on the road in a way, expand the opportunity for us to interact with one another online. And so I created what you might call the free press for classical education. I called it On Classical Education. It's on the Substack platform. And it's a multi-authored, multi-columned publication on classical education at Substack, I guess. And again, we've only just started, but we've had a really strong response by people who want to write about the different parts of classical education. That is curriculum, pedagogy. Right now we're in the middle of a discussion about how we communicate with parents and the community at large about what classical education is. We have an article by Eric Twist from Arcadia. We have different responses as well. So we want to have that kind of dialogue. But we also want people to send us book reviews. And when I say book reviews, I don't mean just current books are great, but also all the books they're reading in their classical education and in their classrooms.
What is your favorite classical book? Classical novel.
People will think I set you up for that, but my Desert Island book.
You made it easy.
Yeah.
You made it easy.
Yeah.
My Desert Island. I read and write about a lot of Shakespeare. So, just to ask, you could ask me on any given day, whatever I'm reading or studying is what is my favorite Shakespeare play. The Tempest I'm working on right now. I think that's Shakespeare's play about liberal education. But my Desert Island book is Plato's Republic. I've taught that. I taught that every year for my whole academic career, and it's the book I think that is the most comprehensive book about education and justice and freedom, liberal education. That what makes you a free human being.
So your Desert Island book.
Yeah.
What would it tell us about today's environment? What are the warnings in there about how we're pursuing things today?
Well, I think that it would tell us that we're just not serious human beings all the time.
No,
anymore.
we're not, are we?
No, and that's why I say that I think classical education is the answer to this crisis of seriousness. That it teaches students to read through a whole book, to follow an argument, and it teaches them how to, through the Socratic method of teaching, it teaches them how to ask questions for themselves and become thoughtful human beings. So they're not they're not subject to the opinions that others are going to try to impose on them, whether it's at college or in society at large. They know how to think for themselves, and that's the best kind of education with which we can provide them.
Quick question. I know you read a lot, but what's a trashy book you like to read? A fiction book like a John Grisham or anything? Do you read anything like that?
Right now, I'm reading Fahrenheit 451.
Oh, okay.
Have you read that?
Oh, yeah.
That's the. I want everyone out there.
Everyone needs to read that.
Fahrenheit
Yeah.
451. It's prescient, and it also shows us how we can create a human library that perpetuates education and reading.
I'm gonna throw another one in that same vein in there. The Moon is a Harsh Mistress.
Oh, I don't know that one. Okay.
It's Vonnegut. It's brilliant.
Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you so much for having me.
Carol McNamara.
Coming on.
Yeah.
And we're going to come out to that symposium in February.
Absolutely. Everyone should come nationalsymposium.org.
And we will have all the details for that on our social media. We will also have a link to the On Classical Education, Dr. McNamara's new amazing space to explore classical education and its philosophy and thought from all the people in that area. Thank you so much for tuning in once again, folks. Make sure you're downloading that podcast. Go to breakingbattlegrounds.vote. We'll be back next week.
I say this every election cycle, and I'll say it again. The 2024 political field was intense, so don't get left behind in 2025. If you're running for office, the first thing on your to-do list should be securing your name on the web. With the yourname.vote domain from GoDaddy.com, you'll stand out and make your mark. Don't wait. Get yours today.
Ho, 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 ho. What do you get when you mix cocoa, candy canes, and strong Wi-Fi signals? You get a podcast. That's right, Santa has a podcast. I'm telling stories from the North Pole, sharing elf updates, and answering your questions. And yes, spilling some holiday secrets. It's festive, it's fun, and fueled entirely by cookies. Tune in wherever you get your podcast. It's Santa Has a Podcast. Just press play.
All right, welcome to the podcast portion of Breaking Battlegrounds. Our next guest today, Renae Cowley, partner at the Utah lobbying firm Foxley, Pignanelli, Cowley, Styler, a campaign consultant, columnist with the Deseret News, and professional rodeo barrel racer. Find her online at Capital Cowgirl. That is a fantastic hashtag, X-tag. Renae, thank you so much for joining us. Folks, she's on to talk about something that's kind of been in the national news, but I know politics. I know stuff. I don't really understand what's going on in Utah with the redistricting.
Well, and that's why Renee's on. She's going to explain to us that Utah now has a new congressional map that Judge gave them.
A lot of brouhaha.
And this has major national implications, and I don't think it's even a competitive seat. So, Renae, thank you for joining us. Tell us what we don't know.
Howdy, Chuck. Howdy, Jeremy. Thank you so much for having me on. Well, you're right. It's a very complicated process so far. Our Lieutenant Governor, Deidre Henderson, called it chaos. I'd take it a step further and call it bedlam.
It's a great word.
It has been a pretty chaotic process so far. Monday night, Judge Gibson finally settled on a map. I think it surprised a lot of insiders, but she picked the plaintiff map, not the one drawn by the legislature. She cited the legislative map that was, albeit drawn under duress, extremely gerrymandered. I think a lot of objective observers can look at the map that she did pick and say that it's also deeply flawed. Even if you do believe the arguments that the legislative map was drawn with knowledge of partisan data, when you look at the map she picked, it cuts Utah County in half, one of our largest counties. It creates what the Salt Lake Tribune cited as a 17-point Democratic advantage. I've seen another independent analysis that has it closer to a 25-point advantage when Democrats only make up about 14% of Utah's voter population, and now they will be representing 1/4 of Utah. It was not drawn by the legislature as required by our state constitution. It was not even drawn by the Independent Redistricting Committee or received any public hearings at all, which also makes it not compliant with Prop 4. So it's confusing to understand from the beginning why she picked this map, but the outcome is that Utah will have a very safe Democrat seat in the 2026 election.
That's not even competitive. There will be no money spent on it, right? If you're plus 18 to 25, no one's going to spend money on that race except for a primary.
That's exactly right. And as we kind of look at these candidates lining up for this primary, of course, you've got Ben McAdams. Now, Ben McAdams started to indicate that he wanted to run after the legislature released their map. Even the legislative map had two districts that were somewhat competitive. Even the Republican redistricting expert that testified in court pointed out accurately that two of those districts were actually more competitive than when Ben McAdams and Jim Matheson won their seats here in Utah. And so, although not perfectly safe for Democrats, they were competitive. So Ben McAdams started filing his paperwork then to announce. But now you have State Senator Kathleen Reby, who's thrown her hat into the ring. You are likely to see Carolyn Gleich compete as well, Nate Bluen, and other very liberal-leaning candidates. This is now going to be a deep, deep blue seat. And I'm not even sure Ben McAdams is going to be liberal enough to win this seat at this point. I mean, he did vote to impeach Trump, but he also supported Evan McMullin, an independent, running against Mike Lee. He encouraged the Democrats to not even put up a candidate against him. He's always been seen as sort of a blue dog Democrat in his time as mayor and his one term in Congress. So I'm not even sure that Ben McAdams is now going to be liberal enough to win this seat.
Well, this is Sam. I want to throw something in there. Could this actually long-term help? Chuck, you have a background on this. Could this long-term help the Republican Party in Utah because they're going to see the face of progressivism on TV and in the newspaper regularly?
I kind of wonder if it has the opposite effect in some ways. I'm worrying that this might signal to some national organizations that maybe Utah's turning purple, which it certainly is not.
No.
But it might incentivize them to pour more money and resources into maybe legislative and local races. We've been seeing some indications of this recently, too. Utah's facing a referendum that will be on the ballot as well in 2026 for the unions. And the unions were able to gather enough signatures to get on the ballot. Shortly
Is this
thereafter,
Unite Here with their what is the measure they're doing?
Yeah, the legislature passed a bill that was pretty conservative, frankly. It basically said that, unions, union bosses can't receive state-funded benefits. They don't get public spaces for free. They have to pay rental fees like everyone else.
So eliminating all the release time provisions that unions always go for that require public funding of their political activities.
Yeah, it frankly wasn't that significant of a bill, but unions saw this as some existential threat. They gathered the signatures. But what happened immediately thereafter is we saw other liberal organizations announcing that they were going to pour money into legislative races. They have targeted 10 legislative races in the upcoming election where they're going to be recruiting and trying to find more liberal candidates to run against Republican incumbents and try to unseat them, trying to flip seats. So I actually worry that this is going to have a more negative effect in Utah by having more kind of liberal dollars, national dollars, poured into our legislative and local races. And then, of course, as Chuck mentioned, the national implications here as well. This could possibly be a factor in flipping the power dynamic in Congress. We could, because of this one Democrat safe seat, we could see a Speaker Hakeem Jeffries. And I don't think that Utah wants to be responsible for that.
What do we know about the judge? Who appointed her? What's her background? What do we know about her?
Yeah, it's been interesting. We've got Representative Matt McPherson right now has indicated that he wants to lead kind of an impeachment effort against her. I believe she was appointed by Governor Herbert, Republican. Our judges are appointed by the governor and confirmed by the state senate. So she went through this process. We are seeing a lot of kind of judicial activism in Utah right now. It's been kind of a 2-year battle of power dynamics between the state legislature and the judicial branch. This is only pouring more fuel on that fire, especially in kind of some of the tactics that this judge has taken in her rulings. Every time she's waited until the very last minute to issue her ruling. And because the lieutenant governor needs time to prepare ballots, to prepare maps, to effectively administer the upcoming election, November 10th was the deadline issued, and this judge waited until 11:45 p.m. to issue her ruling, which basically did not allow the legislature the time to appeal to the state Supreme Court even this decision and try to get an emergency injunction or stay. So it's hard to look at this and say that, yeah, it was done in a way that honors our judicial branch. And I think it's just going to create more problems for the judiciary as we head into the legislative session, because I know the legislature is looking at numerous measures in how to rectify kind of this judicial activism. You're looking at, she might face impeachment. You're going to look at maybe an effort to elect judges rather than Utah has retention elections, and maybe even increasing the number of seats on the Supreme Court. So this is going to have some pretty serious ripple effects.
What is the plan going forward to try to correct this judicial activism? I don't think there's anything they can do for this midterm. Am I incorrect on that?
You're correct, Chuck. The legislature will appeal this decision. They will continue to fight this in the courts. The Utah Republican Party is moving forward with their direct initiative, but because of the timelines in place, they seem to have more or less conceded that this will be the map to govern the 2026 election. I know that even the White House is kind of looking at this and the implications and maybe trying to push for an appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court immediately. But I think that if I were a betting woman, these are the maps that we'll see for the 2026 election. What's interesting, too, is I think these fights might impact the 2028 election, which will be just prior to us redistricting again, where Utah will pick up an additional seat in Congress in 2030. And so we might have, in 6 years, 3 elections with 3 different maps as well. Utah is also working on a ballot question that we're kind of colloquially calling Amendment D. They tried to get it on the ballot last year. There were some notice provisions that weren't complied with, so they weren't able to do that. But also a component of this ruling is the state Supreme Court came back and said that the legislature cannot substantially change citizen initiative or referendum, which basically would create forever laws if there's no checks and balances. Even if there was a agreement between the sponsors of a referendum and the legislature that adjustments and tweaks need to be made, they still wouldn't be able to do that without another costly referendum. So I think a lot of people are now refocusing and pouring resources and time and energy into that, which would preserve the legislative authority to make laws, to pass laws, and to make adjustments to those initiative and referendum in the future.
One last question before we let you go, and thank you for joining us today. So when this initiative was put on the ballot, what % of its money to get it on the ballot came from outside of Utah?
I haven't seen the exact breakdown of that, but the answer is a lot. A
super majority, at least, would you say?
Super majority of it, and it barely passed. I believe it was something like 7,000 votes. It was a very narrow margin. And Republicans in the legislature didn't even bother putting up a fight against it. They really thought it would be ruled unconstitutional, no questions asked. So they didn't think it was even worth the effort to fight. I think a lot of them are kicking themselves now, seeing the spot that we're in. But I think many people are surprised by the decisions coming out of the judiciary.
I remember that. That's just laziness and hubris on part of the legislature. You didn't say that. I said that. Renae Cowley, who brought us the word bedlam today, we appreciate you coming on. And thank you. And keep us up to date if you have any news. And let's get you back on the show soon.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Chuck. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you. This is Breaking Battlegrounds. We'll be right back.
All right, welcome back, and thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you being here throughout the program today. I thought this was a great show today, Chuck.
I do too.
I thought it was a really, really fun show to do.
You have to be smart to like it.
Yeah. which thank goodness, most of our audience is.
Yeah, so if you didn't like it, you know what I'm calling you.
Well, I see some of the comments that other radio hosts get from their audience, and I'm like, man, I'm glad we have our audience.
They're brutal.
My goodness.
It's a brutal business.
It gets ugly.
Well, Gary Gygi, he is the financial expert for us, former mayor, president of Gygi Capital Management. You can find him at gygicapital.com. That's GYGICAPITAL.com. So, Gary.
You did that smooth, Chuck.
Smooth as butter.
Dang.
Gary, We have a stock market that's really high. We have a lot of people very concerned about their financial future. Why is it not merging together to bring happiness?
Yeah, so this happens once in a while. I really like this topic because I've heard about it various times over the last 20 years or so where stock market's doing really well, but Main Street is not feeling it. And I think it's one of these times that we're having right now. And so I have an idea why, maybe a little controversial, but this is my anecdotal information, which is this seems to be carryover from the Obama and Biden approach to the economy, which is they wanted to benefit a certain group of people by making everyone pay higher prices. So I don't know if you go to a lot of different places now where everyone has a tip jar out.
Right.
And during the particularly during during the Biden years, then prices went up, and once certain prices go up, you guys, they don't go down. Groceries are different, commodities are different because those prices can go up and down based on whatever's happening out in the market.
Gary, I want to throw something at you because this is something I've been thinking about, and I've been talking with some folks here in Arizona and other states. The Biden years were uniquely damaging, including to food prices, because they ironed in their green energy agenda to such a degree that the cost of it, bringing the cost of actual produced energy down now is almost impossible because they took so many plants offline that were gas and coal and replaced them with solar and these other things and wind. This is now a drag that we can't get rid of underlying the economy.
It's going to be difficult. I have heard President Trump talk about this lately, and I think he's right. Energy is such a big component of so many things that if you raise the price of energy, you're raising the price of everything.
Correct.
You lower the price of energy, you're going to be lowering the price of everything. So the price of oil has gone down in this year, which means the price of gas at the pump has gone down as well. That's a good thing. But in order for this to have a lasting effect, the price of energy needs to stay down so that businesses that are manufacturing or producing whatever, and as that price of energy comes down, it will make products less expensive. That is good. The type of things I'm talking about is if you've had an electrician to come to your home or a plumber or whatever, some of the trades, their prices went up during the Biden years, during the Biden years due to inflation, and they're not coming down. So that's why there's a lot of people who are not in the stock market for whatever reason, and they're not feeling the euphoria that people that own stocks are. So essentially, it's become kind of a class warfare thing where the people that don't own are attacking the people that do, and essentially saying, the rich got richer during the Biden years and the Obama years, but I never felt it. And so I get what they're saying. Some of those people may be forgetting that they've got a 401k or a pension that's invested in stocks and it's doing well. They may not be seeing it. But inflation in certain areas is still elevated, and that's got to come down before Main Street feels as good as Wall Street does. And that may take some time.
Is that something that Republicans should do a better job of selling, quite frankly, that, hey, there is almost everybody in this country has some sort of stake in the stock market, whether they view it that way or not, right? I mean, whether it's a pension or a 401k or, yes, you have an HSA, whatever those things are, more people are more invested in the market than they think. And I don't think, Chuck and Gary, we do a very good job on our side of the aisle explaining that to people that, yeah, stock market success is your success too.
Yeah, I think that's the differentiating factor that President Trump has with past Republican presidents is they were loath to say how well things may be going. Trump is not bashful at all about talking about things that are going well, and he expects Republican congressmen and senators to do the same thing, because the only way that the American people are going to know about successes is if they hear about it. And so, in answer to your question, Sam, yeah, that I do think Republican congressmen, senators need to be out there saying this is working, and tell them why.
They are doing horrible at it.
Awful.
And I've talked to some. They say, "Well, we're doing it." Like, you literally aren't doing it. I mean, you're deluding yourself.
They are, and so they really need to do two things, which is they need to tell them, what is happening, and more importantly, why it's happening. And sometimes congressmen are I don't know, bashful is the right word, but they're not as aggressive in terms of selling why they're in power and why they're doing a good job. And they really need to do that. It's not enough just to say prices have come down. They need to say prices have come down. This is the reason why. And maybe this commodity over here hasn't come down yet, but here's why I think it will. And give more information as opposed to less information.
As we wrap up here, I have one question for you. You deal with a lot of people.
Sure.
You know their fears of financial future, things of that nature. What is the one thing there's a bunch of things, but if you were the Trump administration and you're giving economic advice, what would you tell them that's something they need to focus on like a laser on that make people feel more confident in their financial future? Is it mortgages? Is it interest rates? I mean, what is the one thing you think they need to focus on and get under control that's going to make people feel like I have a good future? I'm optimistic about it.
Okay, I'm going to answer this in two ways. One of them is everyone's talking about affordability.
Right.
And so I hear it from my children that are in their 20s just saying, Dad, we're never going to be able to afford a home. And so I think that they need to focus on making housing more affordable, which means that as a country, we need to build more homes. We need to remove as many regulations as exist towards building. And so that needs to happen. The thing that I want, that I'm laser focused on, you guys, I hate that we're about 38 trillion in debt. I really do. And I would like them to focus on that and have that be their main focus every day. I hope that the Doge people are still doing something. I don't hear about them anymore, but reducing our debt is a big deal for a lot of us that are in the financial markets who really see it as an existential problem.
30-year-old young couple comes up to you. They say, what's more important to me right now for my financial future, getting a $2,000 check or putting that towards deficit reduction? What's the answer?
If they're in their 20s, it's probably
the $2,000.
Darn it, I walked into my own trap.
Well, no, because economics is based on self-interest. Right. I mean, that's the whole part. That's why we had the conversation before today about classical education. If you're really understanding classical education, you're saying, to have a better future, I got to have a balanced checkbook for our country. That's not what they're thinking. They're saying that $2,000, I can do whatever. And the reality is, I think one of the great lies during the COVID with the the checks they handed out is they thought like everybody's just saving this money. They weren't saving the money; they were spending the money. It's a lie.
So the last question, Gary, if your client gets a $2,000 check, what are you going to tell them to do with it?
And if they're in their 20s, I'm one of the people that believes life should be enjoyed along the way. So I'm going to say, look, if you don't have a Roth IRA, why don't we put it into Roth IRA or create one? But why don't you take some of that money and go do something fun? And so I think life is meant to have joy. So if they go take some of that money, go do something fun, that's great. But also put a little bit towards their retirement. And I think you're accomplishing two really good things.
Love it. Gary Gygi, thank you so much for joining us. Folks, check him out, Gygi Capital Management, Gygi. We really, Gary, always love having you on the program. Thank you so much for joining us once again.
Have a good weekend, guys. Thanks.
Thanks, buddy. This is Breaking Battlegrounds. We hope you've had a great weekend. We hope you enjoyed our show today. Sam, I thought it was fantastic.
This is great. I really enjoy these kind of shows where maybe it's a little bit less directly political, but you get a lot of great info and a lot of good insights.
I agree. So, folks, we hope you have a great week. We hope you'll enjoy the show. We hope you'll give us a 5-star rating. You can visit at breakingbattlegrounds.vote, sign up for our Substack, and also wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great weekend.